When my nosy HOA neighbor demanded to use my pool for her daughter's Sweet 16, without asking, without offering anything, just demanding, I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I smiled and drained the entire pool the day before her party. She called the cops, but by the time she realized what I'd done, it was already too late. This is the story of how I outsmarted the queen of HOA nightmares and made sure she'd never mess with anyone on our street again. When I first bought my house in the picturesque suburb of Maple Ridge, I thought I had found paradise. The lawns were manicured, the streets quiet, the neighbors pleasant enough, and my backyard boasted one of the only private in-ground pools in the entire development. After a grueling few years working remotely and saving diligently, buying that home was my proudest achievement. Then I met Karen. I should have known the second I saw her. A surgically precise bob cut, pastel sweater draped over her shoulders like a yacht club commander, and a clipboard never far from her grip. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was a self-declared queen of the HOA, the Homeowners Association. And if you ask her, her role was more sacred than a Supreme Court justice. At first, it was little things. She left a polite but stern note on my door about my garbage bins being visible from the street, even though it was trash day. Then, 2 weeks later, another note about how my porch light was too bright and could confuse nesting birds. That one made me laugh, until I received a formal HOA violation in the mail with a $50 fine. I paid it. I was new. I didn't want to stir up drama. But Karen wasn't done. By the third month, she was patrolling the street like a security guard. If a car was parked slightly over the sidewalk or a lawn grew half an inch too tall, she'd snap a picture and slap you a citation. I watched her once from my kitchen window as she squatted in front of a neighbor's rose bush with a ruler. It was clear to everyone that Karen lived for the HOA. Still, I kept my head down. I installed motion lights instead of my too bright porch lamp. I trimmed my hedges every Saturday like clockwork. I even painted my mailbox after receiving a community color palette from her with swatches and handwritten notes. But then came the pool incident, the line that Karen never should have crossed. It started innocently enough. One sunny Thursday afternoon, I was relaxing on a lounger by the pool, book in hand, iced tea sweating on the table next to me, the soft hum of summer, birds chirping, kids playing, sprinklers misting the lawns, was the closest thing to peace I had known in a long time. Then I heard the gate open. Karen didn't knock. She didn't call. She just walked into my backyard like she owned the place. I sat up, startled. "Oh, good, you're home," she said with a too bright smile, clipboard tucked under her arm. Hi, Karen. This is private property." I said, try and keep my tone neutral. She waved me off. "Oh, I know, but we're all neighbors, aren't we? Besides, I have the perfect idea for your pool." I blinked. "My pool." She nodded excitedly, stepping closer. "So my daughter, Bree, she's turning 16 in 2 weeks. Huge milestone. She wants a summer bash, something that screams elegance but still fun, you know? I thought about the community clubhouse pool, but, ugh, too crowded. And then it hit me, your pool." I stared at her. "Karen," I said slowly, "you're asking to use my private pool for your daughter's party?" "Not just asking," she said, hands clasped. "Insisting, really. It would mean so much to Bree. We'll decorate, of course. Tasteful themes. Nothing garish. Probably Hawaiian chic." "Oh! And we'll need to move that flamingo flow tie. It's a bit tacky." She wrinkled her nose at the float. "Karen," I repeated more firmly this time, "my pool is not for rent, not for parties, not for the HOA. It's for me. I'm sorry, but I'm not comfortable with that." Her smile cracked slightly. "You're serious?" "Yes, very." She huffed. "Well, that's disappointing. I assumed, as a member of the HOA, you'd be more generous with community resources." I narrowed my eyes. This isn't a community resource. I paid for this pool. It's in my deed. Private property. Karen's demeanor shifted like a storm cloud rolling in. "I see," she said, adjusting her clipboard. "Well, let me remind you that as HOA president, I do have some say in community harmony. I'll be in touch." She turned sharply and left through the gate. That evening, I got an official letter from the HOA, signed by Karen, claiming that my pool represented a shared visual asset to the neighborhood and was eligible for conditional communal use. I laughed out loud. But just to be safe, I pulled out my home's deed and HOA bylaws. No mention of shared pool access. My property line clearly encompassed the pool, fenced deck, everything. Still, I wanted to be absolutely certain. The next day, I called the HOA's management company, the actual legal entity that handled compliance and disputes. The woman on the phone practically rolled her eyes when I read Karen's letter aloud. "No, sir," she said. "That's a private pool. The HOA has no authority to claim it as shared use. Can I get that in writing?" I asked. "You bet." I printed that letter, laminated it, and stuck it on the inside of my gate. Over the next week, things escalated. Karen started walking by with her little group of loyal followers, mostly other Boer housewives, whispering loudly about how some people think they're better than the community. A couple neighbors gave me awkward looks, but others just smiled and shrugged. They knew what Karen was like. 3 days before Bree's party, I got another knock on my door. This time Karen wasn't alone. She had Bree with her. The girl looked miserable. Karen launched into another pitch. "Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot, but it's really just one evening. 6 hours max. I'll even pay for cleanup." "No." Karen's face tightened. "You're being unreasonable." "I'm being private," I said. "There's a difference." She glared at me like I'd just insulted her ancestors. "You'll regret this. You're making enemies in this neighborhood." "I'll take my chances." The next morning, I found a citation taped to my door. Apparently, my fence height was in violation of community aesthetic standards. The fence hadn't changed since I bought the house. I took pictures. More citations followed. Improper shrub trimming, non-approved garden decor, excessive bird feeder activity. She was clearly trying to bury me in HOA complaints. All bogus. That's when I decided, you want war? Fine. You get war. But not with yelling. Not with counter-complaints. Not with pettiness. No, I was going to fight Karen the only way she couldn't stop. I was going to take the pool off the table entirely. That night, I stood by the pool with a glass of wine in one hand and my phone in the other. I called up a pool maintenance company, one I had used before for winterization. "Yeah," I said, "I need to schedule a drain and clean as soon as possible." The guy on the line chuckled. "Bit early for winterizing, ain't it?" "Nope," I said. "Just got a pest problem I want to flush out." He laughed again. "All right, buddy, we'll be there Saturday." Perfect. The party was scheduled for Sunday. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but smile. Karen wanted my pool for her party. She was about to get the shock of her HOA life. Saturday arrived with blue skies, a warm breeze, and the hum of anticipation. Not for Karen's daughter's party, but for what I had planned. At 9 a.m. sharp, the pool service truck backed into my driveway. 2 guys jumped out, one whistling a cheerful tune as he unloaded the equipment. "You sure you want this whole thing drained?" The lead tech, a guy named Dave, asked as he eyed my crystal-clear pool. "Yep," I replied, handing him a printout. "Maintenance. Full clean new liner inspection, pH reset, everything. HOA's being weird about things." Dave chuckled and gave me a knowing nod. "Say no more. I've dealt with HOAs. Half my business is cleaning up after their nonsense." It took hours. The industrial pump roared as it pulled thousands of gallons of water from the pool and dumped it through a drainage hose snaking into the backyard trench. By noon, the one sparkling water had become a trickle at the bottom of the deep end, the sun glinting off wet concrete and empty tile. It looked glorious. Dave wiped his hands on a rag and handed me the invoice. "Should be dry by tonight. Give us a call if you want it refilled next week." "Perfect," I said, signing. "Appreciate it." I spent the rest of the day prepping. Not for anything elaborate, just a little extra defense. I locked the gate with a chain and padlock. I printed out the letter from the HOA management company confirming my pool was private property and stapled a copy to the gate, underlined for emphasis, not a shared amenity. Private property. Trespassers will be reported, just in case Karen tried something bold. And oh, she would. That evening, around 7 p.m., I was watering my front lawn when a convoy of SUVs rolled past. Teenagers inside laughed and blasted pop music. One of the cars slowed as it passed my driveway, and Bree, Karen's daughter, looked out the window. Her expression was hopeful. That hurt a little, but not enough to stop me. Not when her mother had tried to steamroll me. Sunday, party day. At 10 a.m., I was sitting on my porch sipping coffee when Karen strutted down the sidewalk in full event coordinator mode, clipboard in hand, wearing a floral dress and wide-brimmed hat. Her lips curled into a smug smile when she saw me. "I assume the gate is unlocked for us," she said. I blinked. "For who?" Karen huffed. "The party, obviously." I leaned back in my chair, real casual. "Oh, you didn't hear?" "Hear what?" I held up my mug. "Pool's closed for maintenance. Drained it yesterday." For a second, I thought she was going to faint. Her face turned ghostly pale. "You what?" she shrieked. "Maintenance," I repeated, feigning confusion. Had to replace some fittings, retile, balance the chemicals. Pool guy said it was a risk to leave it full. Liability stuff. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish on land. You did this on purpose." "Of course not," I said innocently. "I had it scheduled before you ever came over. Can't plan these things around community events, you know?" Her face was scarlet now. "You ruined my daughter's birthday." I stood. "No, you tried to hijack my property. There's a difference." She sputtered and stormed off. An hour later, the real show began. One by one, the guests started arriving. Cars lined the street. Parents dropped off teens dressed for a pool party. Swim trunks, towels, coolers, inflatable floaties. Some wandered up to my gate and peered over it, confused. Then came the music. Karen had hired a local DJ who began setting up speakers in her backyard, directly next to mine. She started hauling decorations toward my fence. Paper lanterns, balloons, a Sweet 16 banner. It was surreal. She honestly thought she could still go through with it. I watched from my upstairs window as she unlocked the latch on my gate. Or tried to. That's when she noticed a chain and padlock. I swear I saw steam come out of her ears. 5 minutes later, she was banging on my front door like a SWAT team. I opened it just enough to see her red face. "You can't do this," she screamed. "Actually, I can." "You're denying a child joy." "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting my home. Your daughter can have her party, just not in my backyard. You're an awful neighbor. Selfish. This will go on your record." "What record?" Karen froze. I knew she was bluffing. The HOA had no authority to penalize me for not sharing my private pool. She pivoted. "Fine. I'm calling the police. Let's see what they think." "Be my guest," I said. "I'll be inside." 20 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up. Yep, she actually called them. I walked out to meet the officers. Karen was already mid-rant, pointing at my fence, flailing her arms. "She promised to let us use it," she lied. "She offered it months ago. This is theft of service. My guests are here." One officer turned to me. "Sir, is the pool yours?" "Yes," I said, handing him the deed copy and HOA letter. "Private property. Never offered it. Never agreed to anything. She's making that up." The officer took a few minutes to scan the documents. His partner walked to the fence and looked over at the drain pool. "Huh," the second officer said. "It's bone dry. Can't swim in that." Karen's voice grew shrill. "He drained it on purpose, just to ruin my daughter's birthday." The first officer turned back to her. "Ma'am, unless there was a written agreement or contract stating he would host your event, there's nothing we can do." Karen's jaw dropped. "He's sabotaging us." "No law against draining your own pool," the second officer said. "He doesn't want people using it. That's his right. I'm pressing charges." "For what?" the first officer asked. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. She knew she had nothing. The officers looked tired. "Ma'am," This is a civil matter, and honestly, it sounds like there's been some miscommunication. We suggest you make alternate arrangements for the party. Karen's eyes bored into me like daggers. Maybe next time, I said quietly, don't assume you own what isn't yours. The police left. Karen stormed back to her backyard, arms crossed. The music shut off. Guests started whispering. Parents arrived early to pick up confused, sunburned kids who had been promised a pool party. The banner came down. The balloons popped in the summer heat. By 5 p.m., the block was quiet again. I grilled a steak for dinner and ate by the edge of my dry pool, soaking the sunset in sweet, sweet justice. The next morning, I woke up to find a dead goldfish floating in my mailbox. Classy, Karen. Real classy. But the best part? She had no idea what was coming next. Because I wasn't just going to protect my pool. I was going to take down the whole petty HOA empire she built. After the birthday fiasco, things didn't simmer down. They boiled over. Karen didn't just stew in her embarrassment. She went full vindictive tyrant. You'd think a public meltdown, police involvement, and a dead party would humble a person. Not Karen. If anything, her obsession with community discipline doubled. That Monday morning, I got 5 new HOA violation letters stuffed into my mailbox. Not mailed, stuffed. One claimed my deck umbrella was non-neutral in tone. Another said my lawn ornaments were distracting wildlife. One even warned about potential algae in my empty pool. Algae in an empty pool. It was war. But I didn't fight the way she expected, with shouting matches or yelling at board meetings. I fought with receipts. And I had a plan. Operation Paperstorm. First, I started collecting every notice, every ridiculous fine, every photo Karen snapped of my property. I made a folder labeled Karen's Wrath on my desktop. Then I spent 2 nights combing through the HOA bylaws. Turns out, most of what Karen cited was either outdated or completely made up. The icing on the cake? She'd been signing a bunch of notices herself, without the HOA management company co-signing. Illegal. She wasn't supposed to issue fines unilaterally. And guess what? The other board members, 2 retired guys and 1 very timid woman, had no idea half of these citations were even being sent out. So I started digging into Karen's history on the HOA board. Some fun things turned up in public records. Turns out she'd made purchases for the beautification committee, a real thing she invented, without board approval. A $300 bird bath. $450 on seasonal reeds. Even $1,200 for community signage, aka the custom welcome sign with her name on it. And none of those expenses had matching receipts filed with the HOA. I didn't confront her directly. That wasn't the play. Instead, I printed everything out. Binders full, tabs color-coded, copies of bylaws, fines, photos, her signatures, screenshots of texts she sent neighbors. I even included a timeline of her harassment, from the porch light debacle to the pool party meltdown. Then I sent anonymous copies to every homeowner in the neighborhood. 48 homes. 48 thick envelopes, delivered one by one at night. I also CC'd the HOA management company, the real governing body, and the final packet went to the county compliance department, just in case some of those purchases counted as misuse of community funds. I dropped it all off by Wednesday. By Friday, the neighborhood was buzzing. People started whispering on sidewalks. A dad across the street, usually quiet, waved at me with a smirk. The nice old lady down the block stopped by while I was trimming my hedge. "You sent that dossier, didn't you?" she said, barely hiding her grin. I just smiled. "No idea what you're talking about." "Well," she said, "I always thought that woman was trouble." And then came the HOA emergency meeting. Karen called it, of course, at 7 p.m. sharp in the clubhouse. She claimed it was to address neighborhood unrest and misinformation, but it backfired beautifully. I didn't even go at first. I sat on my porch with a beer and listened to the shouting from across the street. Dozens of neighbors showed up. Many had binders in hand. Some brought printouts with highlighter marks. Karen stood at the podium, trembling with rage, tried to claim everything was misinterpreted or taken out of context. Then someone, I later found out it was Bill from house number 17, asked to put a motion on the record, a vote to remove Karen from her position. The room reportedly erupted. She refused, said the HOA couldn't legally remove her midterm. Wrong. Turns out there was a clause in the bylaws allowing removal if 2/3 of the homeowners voted for it. And thanks to my anonymous mailing, almost everyone had shown up. They held a vote right there. Karen lost, 37-11. She stormed out of the clubhouse like a banshee, shouting that the vote was illegal, that she'd sue everyone, that we were a mob. Her clipboard clattered to the ground in the chaos. I picked it up the next morning, left it on her porch. Empty, but I wasn't done. Remember the algae in the empty pool violation? I made that a project. I installed lights under the pool rim, subtle, elegant LEDs that glowed blue and green. Then I planted decorative succulents along the edge and added a couple of water fountains fed by a small hose loop. It looked like a modern art installation. Classy, minimalist, bone dry. Karen, meanwhile, went silent. She stopped walking the street. The clipped, chirpy emails to the neighborhood ceased. Her flowers wilted. Her little HOA flag came down from the porch. One by one, neighbors stopped fearing her. We started talking again. The lady with the flamingos in her yard put them back. The couple down the road brought back their Halloween decorations early, just to spite her. A teenager even spray-painted a smiley face on a trash bin, the same bin Karen had once fined them over. The community healed. But I knew Karen wouldn't go quietly. She was planning something. That woman had too much ego to surrender entirely. And I was right. 1 week later, I came home to a notice tape. No, nailed to my front door in big red letters. Notice of pending litigation. You will hear from my lawyer, Karen D. She signed it with a glitter pen. It would have been hilarious if it weren't so sad. I pulled it down and tossed it in the trash. Karen didn't have a leg to stand on. The HOA board wouldn't back her. The management company had officially reprimanded her, and the police already knew her face. But still, I figured it was time to finish this once and for all. That weekend, I hosted a neighborhood barbecue. Not a massive one, just burgers, music, a few lawn games. I invited everyone, especially those Karen had once alienated. I even set up lounge chairs inside the now-empty pool, with little drink tables and battery-powered tiki torches. It was a pool party with no water. Symbolic, petty, perfect. And the whole time, Karen sat alone on her porch, watching, stewing, plotting. She'd made her move. Now it was time for mine. Karen didn't show her face at the barbecue, but I knew she watched every second of it. I could feel her eyes boring holes into my back through her floral curtains. From the way the blinds fluttered, she was probably pacing, maybe muttering to herself. The neighborhood, once kept under her thumb, was now full of laughter, music, and clinking glasses. That night marked something bigger than petty revenge. It marked freedom. But Karen wasn't done. No, this was her personal villain origin story. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was desperate. And when people like her lose control, they become dangerous. The next week, the mailbox brought it, a letter, thick and printed on heavy cardstock. It was from a law firm. Or at least, that's what it tried to be. The letterhead read Davenport and Fellows Legal Services, which sounded fancy enough, except a quick Google search turned up nothing. No firm by that name existed in our state. No lawyers licensed under that office address. And the signature at the bottom? Karen D., Legal Liaison. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. She'd made up an entire law firm. The letter accused me of emotional sabotage, deliberate disruption of minor happiness, and neighborhood-wide harassment through unauthorized paper distribution. It read like an angry Yelp review crossed with cease and desist. At the bottom was a final warning. If you do not cease all retaliatory actions, we will pursue damages in civil court. Sincerely, Legal Division. Davenport and Fellows. She'd even attached a screenshot of my pool party, the one with no water, and circled it with red sharper like she was submitting evidence to the FBI. That's when I knew she had officially cracked. I wasn't going to dignify it with response, but I did one better. I posted the letter, with personal info redacted, on the neighborhood bulletin board and HOA Facebook group. Captioned it, "When you fire your lawyer and hire your ego." The post exploded. Dozens of neighbors commented, laughing, reminiscing about their own Karen horror stories. People who've been silent before now shared tales of stolen mail, fines for wind chimes, and being told their welcome mats were off-brand. One even posted a photo of Karen measuring their hedge with a ruler. It was beautiful. Then, 3 days later, something weird happened. A white van pulled up in front of my house. 2 men in gray uniforms got out and started unloading orange plastic barriers. City code enforcement, one of them said. "Excuse me," I asked. "We received a report of an unpermitted structural change to a recreational installation." The guy recited like it was from a script. I blinked. "What does that even mean?" "The pool, sir. We have reason to believe it's being modified into a non-compliant structure." I walked them around back. They inspected the empty pool, now a decorative lounge area, with furrowed brows. Took photos. Measured things. Asked me if it was safe for foot traffic. "I've done nothing permanent," I explained. "It's cosmetic. It's still a pool." They nodded. "We'll file a report." They never said it, but I knew exactly who had called them. I also knew what she was trying to do, bury me in bureaucracy. But this wasn't my first rodeo. I'd kept all permits, city inspections, and even the HOA's original acknowledgement that my pool was pre-HOA development, grandfathered in and off limits to their restrictions. I emailed it all to the city office the same day. The next morning, I got a reply, "No violations. No further action required." Another Karen attempt, crushed. But then she crossed a line. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, I found my side gate open. Not broken, not damaged, just swung wide. And inside, muddy footprints led to the pool area. Someone had been snooping. I checked my security camera footage, and there it was. Karen, slipping through the gate like a burglar, snapping photos on her phone, and talking to herself. The audacity. I called the non-emergency police line and filed a trespassing report. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, yet, but I wanted it on file. That night, I upgraded the cameras and installed a motion sensor light above the gate. I also printed a new sign. Notice, this property is under 24/7 video surveillance. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Include HOA members. The next day, she saw it. She didn't even try to act innocent. Just stood there, staring at the camera like it owed her something. I half expected her to start chanting Latin and summon a demon. That weekend, I got my final win. The HOA, newly freed from a reign, sent out a newsletter, and it was a short but glorious paragraph. "We'd like to remind all members that board authority does not extend to private amenities. Homeowners are encouraged to report any misuse of position or false violations directly to management. We are investigating past actions, and reimbursements may be issued." Translation: Karen was under audit. The bird bath, the wreaths, the fake fines, everything. And then, like a fire dying out, she vanished. No more strolls. No more emails. Her house went dark at night. Word was she'd hired a real attorney, not to sue me, but to fight the HOA's internal investigation. Some said she even tried to sell her house. But no one was buying. Who'd want to live in the castle where the self-crowned queen got dethroned? As for me, I refilled the pool, added new lights, put in a small waterfall feature, hosted a real party. Nothing massive, just good people, drinks, and music. Karen wasn't invited. But her old clipboard, the one she dropped at the emergency meeting, was mounted on the poolside wall. Like a trophy, my revenge hadn't just been petty. It had been surgical. Because when someone tries to steal your peace, your pool, and your power, you don't scream. You drain the water, expose the cracks, and make sure they can never swim again.